Okay, so this is a big one. Some games feel emotional before they even kick off. You can feel it in the build up, in the way the conversation shifts, in the way the stakes quietly just sit in the background. And, Arsenal versus Chelsea is one of those games. It was one of those rivalries, London derbies that, always used to ache as an Arsenal fan. Remember the days of Drogba. You just knew that, Arsenal versus Chelsea, you were just not going to get the rub of the dream. We've had some horrible results against Chelsea, and it has changed, right? We've beaten them twice this season, I know, in different competition. But we've already shown that we can handle their chaos. We've already shown we can manage them in tight spaces. Now we have to prove that wasn't situational. We have to prove that it was more structural. And now that this title race feels even more weighted, this is not just another Big Six game. This is everything. Welcome back to Gooner Pavilion. And if you're new here, this is where we slow things down, try and make sense of what we're watching. And if you've been rocking with us through all the February swings and the Brentford drift, the Wolves frustration, the Spurs eruption, then you already know how we approach this. Let's take a breath. Let's build, preview Arsenal versus Chelsea. Let's get into it. Okay, so the recent form table, just shows where things are. Spurs away 4-1, Wolves 2-2, Brentford away 1-1, Sunderland at home controlled. Um, Now, what you're looking at isn't consistency in quality; it's inconsistency, from Arsenal in the last couple of games. Um, when Arsenal play with intent, they look devastating. When they play with caution, the game flattens. And Chelsea's recent form, on the other hand, tells a different story. They aren't dominant, but they're unpredictable. They score, they concede, they oscillate between control and chaos. So when you place these two emotional states next to each other, you realize that this match isn't going to be about who's superior on the pitch. It's going to be about who controls the rhythm first. Um, for Chelsea, this game is about credibility. New manager comes in. They've lost to Arsenal twice, while they've gone ahead and won or drawn other games. And so Rossini is going to be looking at this game as a matchstick, as a baseline, as a standard, a yardstick for assessing how well he's doing in Chelsea. But for Arsenal, it's just simple. It's about trajectory. It's the 3 points. It's about a title. So it's hard not to notice how this fixture has evolved. Like I said, there was a time when Arsenal entered this match with tension. Now we enter it with experience. We've beaten them in demolition mode. We've beaten them in a control 1-0 chess game. Think about last season. We've drawn a Stamford Bridge without losing emotional balance. And we've come from behind in cup ties. So that's a wide range, where we've seen this Chelsea and how we've shown up against Chelsea. So I think that Arsenal has multiple game states in which they can use to win this game. And when you have multiple versions of yourself, then you can succeed against the same opponent, many, many times. Psychology maybe changes. And, it won't feel new, it will just feel familiar. So if I look at something that hasn't really sat right, with me coming into this game, and I'm sure a lot of Arsenal fans, have felt this, and you look at these possession maps, right, you can just kind of see the difference in tempo. We're talking about Brentford, we're talking about Wolves, and just see how these columns have shrunk, especially in the second half, where it just seems like Arsenal weren't doing any attacking actions. It was clearly, something just not quite right. Something was missing. That edge, that vertical incision that you want to see, from your team, passing the ball, being brave, taking risk. And the game just drifted. It was just drifting. The horseshoe of death, as everyone tends to say it now. And you can sense it as a fan, like, because you're watching it and you're just saying, what's going on there, you know, and we just had control without intent, very, very passive. Now you compare that to Spurs, you look at the exact same, possession, pressure, and intensity, and just see how that's distributed pretty much throughout the game. Arsenal kept at it. Now it could have been the fact that it was a not London derby, so we're all at it. But could it also be that, Arsenal are sort of changing things around? After the match, Mikel Arteta spoke about, conviction, personality. He spoke about players stepping into responsibility rather than waiting for the moments to come to them. And you could see how Arsenal attacked, in transition. You could see how quickly they turn ball recoveries into forward momentum. Great example and was that Gyökeres goal. That was over a transition with Odegaard, being in the center of it, passing the ball to Gyökeres, who finally scored. And this Spurs game felt a little bit more than a derby win. It felt like a recalibration for me. Now, I want to talk about Eze because he is dividing opinion in equal measure, in Arsenal fandom. I'm one of those where I think he's a fantastic player and we've just not gotten the best out of him. I don't think that, he's been a bad player or he's, feeling the weight of the pressure, being in Arsenal. I just look at his pass map in that Spurs, see where he's getting the ball. You can see where he's he's actually making a difference. You look at that center, that zone 14. He was hovering around that. You can just see that, from this pass map. And and for me, Arteta, when he was talking about players embracing responsibility in big moments, I feel like, Eze is this player that could make the difference for Arsenal. The same thing that he did for Crystal Palace, taking them into the cup final and ultimately winning the cup. I hope that Mikel Arteta, by what he said about figuring out how to get the best out of Eze, I'm hoping that we can see a lot more for that, because he stepped into that game. He didn't hide. He didn't make safe passes. There were questions about tempo, about fit, and whether he slowed certain phases down. But Spurs, I thought he played with authority. And I hope that that is really a shift. And now the question is going to be, can he bring that same bravery when the pressure feels quieter but heavier? And Chelsea is going to be a test. It's going to be a test for Mikel Arteta, whether he trusts him to play him, especially with Odegaard on the bench, and just eager, to come in and do something, right? From a Chelsea side of view, I don't think Chelsea is going to approach this game, like Forest or Brentford. They're not going to just sit in and absorb. I don't think that is. Chelsea have tried in a lot of games to show different sides. And Rosinho, like I said, will want to use this game as a yardstick. I think for me, very key player for Chelsea is really Enzo Fernandez, and how Leon Rosinho uses him. He seems to be the trigger for a lot of their quick movement in terms of attacking options, and they tend to sort of play with the ball, and then when it hits Enzo Fernandez, it's almost a trigger for the likes of Cole Palmer, Esteval to start running, because he can find them with the pass. So I think a lot is going to be about how we can box Enzo in, deny him getting the ball as much as possible, but also if we can restrict his influence, in this game, then I think that Arsenal will be able to dominate that. Um, Chelsea, they look for isolated transitions. They will try and drag Arsenal into an emotional exchange. And this is what they've done in the second half. Rosinho brings in, whether it's Cole Palmer, or makes substitution, and the game just become chaotic. We saw it a little bit in the cup game, in the first leg of the cup game. And this is where discipline is going to be essential, for Arsenal. If Arsenal overcommit, Chelsea would attack the space behind. And if Arsenal rush possessions, Chelsea will counter. And I think this is kind of what that game is going to be. It's going to be a counter-attacking game for Chelsea because, hey, they're playing away from Arsenal, and how great would it be for them to actually, stop Arsenal or dent Arsenal ability to go in for the title. So I think this game is going to be about managing space and the emotional rhythm simultaneously. Now, key tactical themes for me is if Arsenal begin this match with sharp circulation, early vertical passes, the Emirates crowds are going to lean forward. And I just think that's natural. The tempo will feel intentional and Chelsea will retreat slightly. Now, if the opening phases become cautious, and then the energy will tighten. It's just, how it is at this time of the season. And that's the balance. Um, for me, Rice and Zubimendi, we need to control the second phases. And I say that, with also wanting Zubimendi to take a rest. Just look at this, average minutes for Arsenal players. Look at who are the guys that are right up there at the top. Obviously, David Raya is goalkeeper, plays all the Premier League games. That's fine. But then now look at what you're seeing there. You're seeing Rice, you're seeing Zubimendi. And for me, I mean, it's just crazy, right? And if you're trying to find Norgard on this map, you have to look further down in this table to actually see where Norgard is. He's only played slightly more minutes than Max Doman, and Max Doman hasn't been playing for a very long time and has been injured. And the disparity, over 2,000 minutes in disparity between Norgard and Zubimendi. Surely that can't be right. So, I mean, Norgard is a great player. He's a good player. We bought him to come and help us. Why are we not allowing him to help us? And that's something that I'll probably never understand. And it might be the one criticism about, how we are balancing the squad. We're only in February, and look at how many miles on the clock these players are. There's no wonder why Jurgen Timber feels jaded. He's up there, top 5 players in terms of minutes this season. Surely there's got to be a balance, to all of this. Now, in terms of the lineup, I'm not expecting radical decisions here, guys. I expect Raya to be in goal, Saliba and Gabriel. They provide that platform. And I'm afraid, it's probably going to be Timber and Hincapie, even though I would rather want to see Mosquera because I very, very well. And listen, I'm not saying that Timber didn't play well against Spurs, because when I watched the game, I saw a lot of good things that he did, and especially that pass to Gyökeres. But I do think that he cannot play 90 minutes. I think that this is the time where you start to bring him out. And the same thing with Zubimendi. Maybe he starts, but bring Norgard in, bring Timber in, and let's help everyone to get Arsenal over the line. Eze, I believe, will start this game, and then it's going to be Saka, Gyökeres, and then it's going to be a decision between Trossard and Martinelli. Now, Trossard started the last game. I probably expect him, to start in this game as well. Although it'd be really interesting to see whether Mikel Arteta might try Martinelli, because I think that where Chelsea have been a little bit vulnerable, and I've seen it in a couple of games, is when you have a striker like Gyökeres and you're able to go past what Chelsea are trying to do, especially on the left-hand side, right, from a defensive perspective. And then Gyökeres can at least, hold the ball and allow someone to run. Other teams have not been able to do that because they don't have the pace. But Martinelli has got that pace, and it will be interesting to see whether Mikel Arteta is going to use Martinelli's pace, against Chelsea defenders. But I think for me, this game, as important as it is, we're at home. We have to be coherent. We have to impose ourselves as well. So I expect this to be competitive, but controlled. Something like a 2-1, feels plausible. Not because Chelsea lack threat, but I just think that Arsenal's structure at the Emirates will just settle this game. So before we close, guys, if you haven't watched my Spurs post-match reaction, I do encourage you to go check it out. It's live on the channel as well. The road to 90 recalibration is there too as well. Because I feel like we almost had to recalibrate that 90, because I think 90 will be tough. We might need around the late 80s in order to win this title this season. But let me know what you think. Drop your predictions below in the comment section as well, and tell me whether you think the Spurs performance was just an emotional momentum, or it was a sign of progress, sign that Arsenal have put behind a poor run of form. And of course, we will be back to do our 3 ups and 3 downs after this Chelsea game as well. So we'll see you in the next one.